Hello, my fellow CS colleagues, and welcome to another episode of CS Stories with me, your girl, your CSS nerd, Sarah B. Cruz of Pre-Treat CSS. We're here to educate, motivate, and help you onboard into that career mindset. And before we get anything going, let's talk a little bit about that career mindset, okay? I think there's this misconception that when you're succeeding, it's only when you're achieving. And I don't think that serves our industry. And that's a really big part of the reason why CS Stories has come to fruition. And I'm so grateful to the Knowledge and Nonsense Network, taking the time to hear my show pitch and giving me the platform to really talk about all the knowledge with no room for nonsense, and really creating this dynamic, conversational-based platform where we can post your comments. So even though this is a live show, feel free to get active and interactive. Network with everybody that's coming on here, because we're all sharing that same common space, because we have all flopped. We have all flopped, my dear, sweet CS colleagues, okay? There's this idea that, well, we have to embrace the idea that professional development not only comes with opportunities, but it also comes with opposition. And with those two, opportunities and opposition, success can come from them. Now, they may come in different forms. And I know we're kind of tired of hearing this phrase where it's like, oh, whatever doesn't, kill you makes you stronger. And it's like, well, I kind of want to die when it's happening. So even if we can move out of that mind space, there is success and growth and mind shift and professional pivoting and key life skills and professional skills that can come out of the opposition that we face. And I know I'm always shouting out to my CSS nerds that when you feel uncomfortable in a space or you feel particularly challenged, that's where you have to lean in, because that's where the growth is waiting. Okay? So listen, I didn't have a flop this week. Yay. So I figured I'd offer a little bit of motivation and really help us get into the mindset for this evening, because we got a show tonight. Talk about bringing all the ingredients to the table for professional development. We have Jessie Stir That Pot Lopez. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Jessie's platform, with the What Do You Do sterile processing education and training platform, he has also started a podcast called Stir That Pot. And Jessie's here to offer explanations and ask the hard questions in a way that makes sure it's getting all the attention of those that need to address it. You. Because to challenge the way that we've always done something, we have to talk about how we've always done it. And listen, Jessie is ready for it, okay? He has shared a spot with me in starting in the sterile processing field as a veterinary medicine approach. He's gone on to have 8 certifications. Like, you guys thought all my letters made me a CSS nerd. Wait until you meet this one. I'm not going to hold him back from you guys, because I'm sure he has lots of valuable and actionable insight. Without further ado, Jessie Lopez.
Hey, Sarah, what's going on? Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, my dude, I'm so
Yes,
happy you're here.
yes, thank you. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm psyched. I'm everything in a nutshell here.
All right. Yes. Listen, and so if you guys don't interact with Jessie Lopez on social media, you guys are missing out. Okay. So, Jessie, I feel like on social media, you are so dynamic. And I know we've had our own run ins on social media, but I feel like even though we tend to stand on opposite sides of the street, we always meet at the crosswalk. And I think I even have some screenshots of us agreeing lately.
Yeah. That's it's surprising that we do agree. I'm like, oh, what? We agreeing? And I mean,
What?
again, yeah. That's it's I guess I'm curving to the likings. I guess.
Yeah, you know what? I think bends work both ways. Let's both be ribbon retractors, all right? Let's be a little
Yeah.
malleable. Let's meet in the pathway there, because I think the insight you offer on that frontline basis, and especially in the type of environment that you were growing in your sterile processing career, offers a certain type of insight that I'm not privy to. So just because it's not necessarily my way of thinking doesn't make my way of thinking right. So that's why I'm just so excited to have you here so we can bridge
Thank
these
you.
gaps, right?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
All right. So listen, my dude, pleasantries aside, we got to know, Jessie Stir That Pot Lopez, what was your biggest professional flop?
You already know it. It's my ability to butt heads with the big wigs. I am such a when I had a theory or a thought process in my head is I'm ready to sharpen the horns and full steam ahead. It's if it's wrong, it's wrong. It's right, it's right. And my biggest flop, like getting to where I'm at right now, was, you know, if I seen something wrong, is I made it known and I
Mm,
didn't stop making it known. I didn't know
mm,
how to pick. I didn't know how to pick my battles. Let's put it that way. I was always told throughout my careers, you got to learn how to pick your battles. And I'm like, well, if we're losing, then we need to fight. And that is my biggest flop. It took me. It's still part of my. It's still the flop of my career. Is I don't know when to zip it.
mm. Jessie, that's so I think that's interesting. So we're already starting the show off with a whole different setup. So typically when I have guests on, they talk about a certain instance. And you're
Yeah,
literally talking about a professional attribute.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
really intimate. Like
yeah.
that's close to heart. How did it feel actually like saying that? And I mean, what is that like owning something like that? And what's that like on your end?
It's hard because I'm an emotional speaker. I'm an emotional person, and when I'm passionate about something,
Mm,
you see it in my facial expression, you hear it in my voice, and I fight for what I love. And when
mm,
I love something, and I'm 100% sure because I know I got the documentation. I know I've paid attention to the subject matter experts. I know I've visited other facilities. I've seen what's right, what's wrong. And when I see it, it's like it's hard for me to say,
mm.
no, I'm just gonna let you walk away with that one. No, it's hard. It's very, very difficult for me.
I can imagine, and I think that I really appreciate how much you're challenging yourself to not react and you're waiting to respond because I almost feel like that. Well, that definitely raises the appreciation of emotional IQ because if that's something you have, it's emotional intelligence, Jessie. Like, I see how you portray yourself, I see the points, I see where you're planting my flag, you know,
Right.
see where you're
Yeah, yeah.
planting it. And they're extremely valid and righteous movements, and I think that I just really want to commend you for challenging the ability to respond instead of react. Have you ever heard it expressed like that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had several people. It's like, you really, and I usually don't jump the gun like that. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's like that's not me. I never bring an argument to the table without me
mm,
having some kind of facts to guide me or some kind of knowledge.
mhm,
And it's funny because I'm about to do a podcast soon talking about education versus training. And regardless of where you get your education from, it depends where you get it from or who you get it from.
mm,
So I don't get the first source and be like, oh, I'm running with this one. Like I gotta be like, okay, let me cross-reference that source and see if everyone is talking the same language.
mm.
My problem is that once I have that knowledge in my power and in my possession, it's like I feel like I don't know if you know Dragon Ball Z, but I feel like I'm about to do this big Kamehameha. It's like I'm loading it up. I'm loading it up, and I'm like I'm ready to fire because the minute you come with something wrong is I'm letting it out. Here's all the information. What's up? So that's me.
So in
That's me.
in that, so for anybody who's not an anime nerd out there, Dragon Ball Z is pretty much the foundation of all anime. You have to watch it.
Yes.
It's very important and it's quite long-winded. But this action, this Kami in his hand, it's literally like shoving all the Amy ST79, the AORN, you've got
Yes.
some additional ST90 in there, and don't forget a little bit of your own ingredients and, you know, a little bit of sass and jazz in there. And then it's just an explosion, right?
Yeah. It's like I try to reference it. Let me tell you, it's like when something comes in, it's like I run to the references, and I'm like, I don't go to the books in our training guides. I go straight to the source. I'm looking at regulations. I'm looking at standards. I'm looking at, you know, what AORN is saying. I'm seeing what SGNA say. I'm looking at what the multi-society is saying. And I'm like, no, it's right here in writing. No, no. And they're like, Jessie, calm down. It's like, look, it's like we're getting our butts kicked here, like constantly. And I'm not seeing, and again, I guess with my career, even with my career growth, it's like, I didn't speed through this. I didn't want it at first. I didn't want to be in leadership or be this like subject matter expert. I just wanted to be a worker. But the more knowledge I gained, the more certifications I got, I was like, no, I'm a leader. I'm a natural leader. I'm a man's man. I need to lead. This is me. I got to do this. So.
Oh, man. So I think so. Jessie, you just left us with a bunch of nuggets to unpack, and I can't wait to learn about the silver lining after our commercial break. So everybody hold tight, and we're going to unpack all that knowledge that Jessie just dropped and exploded on us. Yeah. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. We are back with Jessie Stir That Pot Lopez. Hey, Trey, thanks for joining us. I see you on LinkedIn promoting in that way. That's what's up. And I want to take a second to recognize the language class that was just promoted in our commercial break. Sharon wrote a book called Hold Your Form. And it was such an inspirational anecdote for making sure that you present yourself in a way professionally, even in the most high tense situations. Very similar to the way that Jessie is challenging himself to respond and show up in a way for his professional development. So imagine taking Hold Your Form to your language. Oh, so you're literally teaching your mouth to speak on the actions that you want to portray in a way that makes people want to join you. So I wanted to take a second to shout that out, because if you ever seen Sharon speak, she is such a dynamic and she involves everybody in the conversation, even on virtual platforms. So if you get a chance, check that out. But Jessie, you said some stuff I got to unpack here. All right. So I have to ask you, first of all, when you rush to the regulations and the guidelines and everything, that language that says should or ought to or could, that must be killing you, my dude.
And it's funny you say that, because it's a double-edged sword. Because when I speak to subject matter experts and they're explaining stuff to me, and I say, well, our guidelines say should, what they throw in my face is, oh yeah, but that should is going to go in a quarter language and it's going to hold pretty good. But when I throw it back out, it's, well, it should. You know, when I talk it to my upper management, it's not must. I'm like, wait a minute, hold the horses. We just came from listening to a podcast, we listened to a conference, and all the subject matter experts, viable subject matter experts that have been in the field for 30 years, they're saying that should is strongly held in a court of law. So why is it when I'm regurgitating the shoulds that, you know, we don't really need to do this, or it's like, oh, well, it's a should. So yes, our standard, and well, I live in New Jersey. So our should with Amy is law. So it isn't a should, it's a must. So when they come into our facility, whatever Amy is saying with our standards, we have no play with that one. So I'm like, okay, Now what?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the option of saying, oh, we don't need to follow that. We have to follow Amy standards because we adopted it as law.
And I think that's great. And New Jersey is one of the states that require certification, right? To
That is
maintain
correct.
your profession. So kudos,
Yes.
Connecticut does too. What's up?
Yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah.
and I think that actually I understand why you ask the question, what do you do? It's not from an inquisitive point of view. It's almost from the stance of my hands are tied. What do
Yeah.
you do? So
Yeah.
I would like to hear the transition of moving from reacting to responding to what do you do when your hands are tied? And how did you find that silver lining to continue to find different ways to bring the same thing up over and over again? Because that's daunting.
And Sarah, I haven't found that silver lining. I'm still
Mhm.
digging for it.
Okay.
I just stand my ground. I stand my ground. I've changed my ways very little in
Mhm.
that again, I try not to show my emotions. I try to get that poker face, but it's like, okay, maybe right now I didn't win this battle, but we're gonna wait
Mhm.
because it's gonna come back up eventually. Somewhere
Mhm.
along the line, this conversation is gonna come back up and I'm gonna pick up right where I left because I'm like an elephant. My memory is superior. So when that conversation comes back up, I'm not gonna be the one that says, "Oh, I told you so." I'm gonna
Mhm.
be like, oh yeah, that information, it's right here conveniently in my backpack. Here it is right here. All highlighted for you and ready to go. What would you like me to do?
Mhm. What do you want to do? That should be
That's
like
right.
your spin-off. What do you
Yeah.
want to do?
Yeah. Hey, I think that needs to be my spin off. Yeah, like okay.
Yes, a little
Yeah.
spin-off episode there. No, and
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that I really like how you said that you're still digging for it because I think that shows that even when you're in your professional pivot point, because what you were describing very much of like, I'm going to plant my flag here. And even just the way you used to bring it up, you've transitioned how you're talking about it, that you're showing that in that pivot, it takes a while to see the benefits of changing a mindset or changing how
Yeah.
you approach something. Putting it in your book bag already highlighted for when it's appropriate. Even just that motion of putting something in the book bag away is part of your pivot point. So what do you do when you start to feel what do you do when you start to feel frustrated that you're putting it in your book bag? How do you re-engage with the whole point of it? How do you not lose the point?
Well, I actually, curve it. I curve it to another subject. It's like, okay,
Oh.
I can't talk about this one. So let's talk about the next point. Because the more I dwell on it, and in the past, I would not move from that spot. No, we're gonna settle this solution.
Mhm.
We're gonna come to a solution. But I just say, okay, we're just gonna leave that right now. And I just learned how to multitask, really, or multi-think, or multi problem solve, whatever you want to call it. As just I just went to the next point. It's like playing checkers, I guess, or chess. It's like that pawn is still there. Let me move this next piece because that's
Mhm.
where I need to go to. So that's basically what I did. I mean, again, I always go back to that backpack and go, okay, I know you're
Mhm.
still there. I'm going to keep you nice and warm. Make sure that I'm right because I also cross-reference myself. I'm like, all right, put yourself in check. Maybe you were wrong, Jesse. Maybe in the
Mhm.
heat of the moment you thought about something and you misinterpreted. Let me go back and look at it. And
Mhm.
let me tell you, being an educator, I might have read my ISHIM and CBSPD manual, training manuals, probably 15 to 20 times over. And I've never read it page for page and word for word, but I always find something and be like, ooh, interesting. Let me
Mhm.
see what Amy says about this. Let me see what AR, and because maybe, quite maybe, that should was not a should.
Mm.
It was an option.
Yes. No, and I like that. So in your current role is in education now, right?
Yes, I'm an educator now. Yes.
So let's unpack that a little bit. You moved
Ah,
from your traditional leadership style or,
yeah,
just your progressive, even if there's not a career ladder, there's still that progressive movement towards leadership in sterile processing.
yes.
So what was it like?
Well,
What was it like
honestly,
shifting?
yeah, well, it was fantastic. Let me tell you, I think I'm in the role. I'm in the facility with the team and the role that I think that I was made for in this industry.
Mm,
With my first facility is I wanted to be a leader there so bad. and I was afraid to leave. I was afraid to leave that facility because I loved it there. It was a great team. It was a top 10 hospital. It had so much potential for growth. It was a large hospital. It was busy. And I'm like, this is me. I hate boredom. I don't do good with boredom. So you got to keep me busy. So I wanted to grow there so bad. But, like I said, I was clashing with management. Like I was a regular technician challenging management all the way up to the director. I didn't care who crossed my path. It's like, you're wrong. You guys are wrong. What we're doing here is absolutely wrong. And we're getting our butts handed to by Jaco, all our surveys, and we're running around like chickens with our head cut off. And eventually somebody looked me up on Instagram and gave me an opportunity to become a supervisor. So I went from technician all the way up to assistant manager, actually. I skipped the supervisor role, the lead role. I was an assistant manager at a facility for a year. And from there, I jumped on LinkedIn. I was never on LinkedIn. And somebody said, hey, go on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, that's for the professional people. I'm ghetto. I don't belong in that fight. I'm a little too rough. And I said it to myself. I'm like, I'm a little too rough around the edges. Yeah, I'm too rough around the edges for LinkedIn. That's where the professionals are at. Everything is sugar coated there. I don't want to go there. And that's why I started Stir That Pot, because I wanted to tell it raw and just how it is. I didn't want to sit there and read from a script or sit there and rehearse anything. I wanted to say it straight from the heart, from my experience, from what I interpret in the standards. Opinionated. I wanted to engage in dialogue and debates, whatever. If you want to bring the noise, bring it. That was me. That's what Stir the Pot is for, is get those conch wheels running there. And when I put that out on LinkedIn, I was discovered again, and they were like, yo, we have an educator role. We need you. And I'm like, what? Really? And I'm like, I don't know, because it was like an hour and 20 minutes away from where I lived. And I'm like, I work right down the street, 10 minutes. I'm good. And they were like, look, we'll make it worth your while. Come over, see the facility, see what we're doing. And when I went there, I was like, whoa, I need to be here. I need to be here.
That's great. Yeah. That's so exciting, because I feel like you might be my Jersey soul brother or soul sister, because I see so much of myself in you, Jessie, and that's probably why we go like this often online. Well, maybe we don't really. Anyways, that's probably why we're the way we are. I just see so much of myself in you, and my mentor was so patient with me. God bless him. He was so patient with me as I was trying to work through that too. So I wonder if in your education role now, how are you using your education role to define the word right? You talk about, I'm right. This is why I'm right. Can you break down some actionable steps in the next minute of just like, what are some ways you can tell you're right? Just like 1, 2, 3, A, B, C.
I mean, it's not even about how I'm right. It's I teach by the book. It's like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And this is how, because this facility has a unique program where we take in internal candidates. As an educator, we take internal employees and give them an opportunity to become certified and work in the sterile processing department. So while we're getting educated, they're also getting their 400 hours hands-on to become certified. So everything I teach them is right out the book. Every time I say something, and it's funny because we go out on the field to pass the exam. And then I told my students, now I'm teaching you to pass your exam. Now I have to teach you what the facility teaches us and see and interpret that. So is there a 100% right way to do things? No. And I think that is the challenge in our field. That is the challenge.
We're gonna go to a commercial break on that cliffhanger, because I have so many more questions. Jessie, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay. Let's go. Oh, look at see, you were
Yes.
talking about stuffy LinkedIn and I buttoned my polo to look more appropriate. No.
I'll stay with my elaborate t-shirts here.
Yes. Listen, you already know how I feel about the t-shirts, Jesse, right?
Yeah.
No, and before we went on commercial break, I think you left something really, really juicy. And I want to take the last couple of minutes. Can you believe it's already been 26 minutes? It just
All right. Just
right?
fly by. Yeah.
Yes. So let's unpack some of the gold you left there. I think it's interesting that when we start our professional ambitions, we immediately think of these traditional career ladders, whether they exist or not. And we want to move up these ranks because these are the predetermined steps to where we're going to be. And as sterile processing evolves as an industry, it's almost like managers need the type of support that an educator can offer them. It's almost like a checks and balance. I know me personally as an educator, I really like wrestling, and I have a post-it note that says know your role. It has a word in front of it that somebody says, like The Rock. But anyways, it's all about knowing your role and when to collaborate, when to support, and when to provide. And I think you really broke that down when you were talking about the shift in your mentality from leadership to education. So I'm wondering if you could spend a couple of minutes telling me what it's like seeing where you moved from in leadership to education and pretty much having to work with yourself in
Right.
reverse.
And honestly, this is a dual role because my title is educator slash quality assurance manager.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
I'm still in a leadership role because I have to guide the employees on the floors, So
Mm-hmm.
I still do coverage on the floors to make sure that production's done and
Mm-hmm.
that sterilizations are correct. But going this is more my role more is basically getting the right people in the department within the hospital. It's allowing that growth within the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And as an educator, it's like that transition from just being, reporting out to that director and making sure that everything is okay, or get on conference calls every half hour, which I'm glad I got out of that because I was like, we're sitting here talking about what? Oh man, I could be out on the floor helping out, some of the
Stuff to
solutions.
do.
I don't have time to be sitting here talking on this conference call for 2.5 hours about an application that I'm not going to use. It's like I'm out of here. So, so it was great. I'm not a desk person. I don't ever see myself as a pencil pusher or anything. I'm I'm on the floor, engaging with people. I'm sitting there having rap off contests with people, and
Mm.
doing things like that. That's me. So it's that transition for me was a huge relief because
Mm.
it was leadership. The leadership role was great, and it
Mm.
earned me a lot of respect because a lot of individuals was like, "Who's this guy?" And that's like they would see all my certifications because I wear my badges proudly, and they'll be like,
Mm.
what's all that mean? And I'm like,
I'm smart.
okay. So I go with it, and they go, "Oh, okay." And then I start talking about stuff and certain instances in there to troubleshoot and to really um, get to the source of the problem of what's going on. And I think that's what made me such a great leader. It's like I didn't see a problem and just left it alone. It's like I
Mhm.
was digging into it, trying to figure out the source and reporting back, hey, this is what I found. This is what I'm looking into it, engaging with my vendors to be like, hey, look, have y'all seen something like this? Because I've worked at 11 different hospitals, but I haven't worked cross country. What do you guys see? And they go, oh, well, Jesse,
Yes.
you got it. You're on to something. And they're like, oh, okay. So I miss that aspect of it, but with the education part, is just keeps me engaged because I'm always
Mhm.
looking at conferences, I'm always looking at podcasts, I'm always reading material, I'm
Mhm.
always trying to come up with material. So and it's like I do it on the fly. It's like, oh wait, I need to talk about this, and I engage with my students with it. So they'd be like, oh yeah, we saw you stir the pot, and let's talk about that in class. All right, let's do it.
Like, listen, you stirred this pot, and now I gotta stir that pot. So we're gonna do this on the floor. No,
All right.
listen, I, Jesse, I really want to thank you. this pot has been cooked, as you would say. But I want to end with this note. I think that it's phenomenal that you joined the LinkedIn Voices. I think it's great that you found a platform to have your tone add to sterile processing amongst the healthcare industry. Because even though you may be a boy from Jersey, all right, we hanging out, and that's my Jersey accent, okay? So
Yes.
you may be a boy from Jersey, but there's lots of individuals in Jersey that are looking for someone to personify them and help them voice their own concerns. So through your
Yes.
own actions, you've made a space and a gateway for individuals to create a path that may be similar to yours. So I
Yes.
thank you for
Yes.
that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to the little ghetto side of me, little rough edges here, but it's great. It's great to be on here. And as you know, I seek you out to kind of help me into my career because I was like, something that's another flop. It's like I never seeked help. I didn't know nothing about networking. I didn't know. I was afraid actually because I thought people were going to look at me and be like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're a little too ghetto there. You're a little too rough. Tone it down there, buddy.
No.
So,
Nah, you're all right. I like you just the way you are. And listen, I
thank you.
think
Thank
our
you.
industry benefits from you. I know our half hour has been very enriched just by
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And listen, my dude, we should do this again. Flop part 2.
Definitely. Definitely.
We'll call it
Hey.
the Kami Hamina.
Yeah, whatever. Hey, we call it a spirit bomb. I'm ready.
We're done. No.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
guys. So thank you all again for joining us this evening and taking advantage of the chat and the comments so we can throw them up on the board and have active conversation. Next CSS story, we're going to have Allison Sonstily joining us from Ascend Co Health. She is talk about upfront, authentic, and 100% genuine, which Jessie has clearly laid the way for us the rest of this month. Allison is going to pack some really actionable steps, and we're going to discuss some of her aspects of her professional flop that led her to where she is presenting professionally today. Guys, thanks again for joining us. You're the real MVPs. Bye.
All right. Peace, guys. Peace.